Good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll just wait. I see people are still joining. Okay. We still have a few people joining, so I'm just going to give it a couple of seconds. Okay. I'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the e-commerce business seminar from the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, BEDC. We'll be talking today about processing online payments in Bermuda. And we have a fabulous lineup for you of some amazing folks that will be talking to you about what you can do in Bermuda to accept payments. Tons of questions that you've sent in, so I want to say thank you very much. I will introduce myself. I'm Cora Wells. I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I have founded and am the CEO of Connectech Coding. It's a technology training center where we teach everyone from the ages of 7 and up all about technology. I also run and manage a software development company called W&W Solutions. I'm on the board of a new company for cybersecurity and providing security solutions. And then I also help to run a really awesome internship program for tech college students. So I'm all things tech is sort of what I do. I obviously I sit on many boards and committees, both nonprofit and for-profit, to help with anything tech related. So today what we're going to do is we have 4 amazing panelists that are going to chat with you today. And we're going to start with one of them, and that would be Chris Burns. And Chris is, actually, you know what, before we get started, what I'd like to do, sorry guys, is if everybody could put in the chat one thing that you would like to learn about today with regards to online payments. And so I'd like to see sort of what everybody hopes to gain from this seminar and make sure that we meet your needs, right? So if you could just in the chat area, just to put, you know, a couple of words of what you'd like to learn about. Maybe it's online payments in Bermuda as general, but maybe it's about Stripe or Authorize.net or plugins or, you know, third-party payments or anything like that. So if you could all sort of just put it in the chat, that would be great. And I will just give everybody a little bit of time to get that sorted. And while you're doing that, I'm going to introduce our first presenter. Sorry about that, Chris. And that would be Chris Burns. And Chris is the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce. And he's worked in the e-commerce industry for 19 years and has served as the CEO of First Atlantic Commerce for the past 10 years. His expertise lies in assisting companies and banks to develop and deploy successful e-commerce strategies across Latin America and the Caribbean region. Today, FAC is operating in over 30 countries. I have to say that's awesome. Processing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and it is the most connected payment gateway in the Caribbean and Central America, with team members in 5 countries. That's fabulous, Chris. Sorry, I'm really excited for this. FAC clients include Flow, Digicel, PriceSmart, Sandals, and many of the region's governments and major utilities. Chris is also the CEO of PowerTrans, a sister company to FAC, which was recently started to address many of the inadequacies in the point of sale industry in the Caribbean. So I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he has a presentation for you, and we will have we can ask a few questions of Chris at the end, but I may cut it a bit short so that we can hear the remainder of our presenters, and then we will always have questions at the end as well. Thank you, Chris.
Hi there. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Thanks, Carl. Thanks to BDC for putting this on. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Can you see my screen?
We see the GoToWebinar. We see the GoToWebinar screen right now, the one that has connected to GoToWebinar, I think.
Right. Okay. How about now?
Your presentation is coming across. Yep. And so you just want to put it in present mode.
Yep. Okay. It's thinking about it. Can you see that now? Sorry, it's being a bit slow here. How about now, Carl? Can you see the?
We can still see the slides on the side.
Weird.
Like, so it's not in present mode yet.
It is, but it's showing on my different monitor, so.
Change the, when you do share screen, there's a little drop down under like the play where it says show at the top. Yep, there you go. Yep, now we can see it.
Okay, perfect, great. Sorry for that. So who is First Atlantic Commerce? So FAC is an e-commerce payment gateway company. So effectively, we're a software company that's been based in Bermuda. We were founded here back in 1998. We are now a wholly owned subsidiary of the Gibbons Group of Companies, or EGL, if you're familiar with that term. So that's same holding company as people like Colonial, you know, a lot of real estate around Bermuda, Burroughs, Bermuda Motors, etc. So we're a small sort of software division of that group of companies. And we start out life as just purely as a technology provider here in Bermuda, connecting to a couple of local banks. Fast forward many years later, a couple of decades later, we're, as Carl said, we're in about 30 countries. We're closing in on about 4,000 merchants, clients on the platform. We connect to just about every major e-commerce acquiring bank within the English-speaking Caribbean and all of Central America. So, you know, we're one of these, we're probably the largest, I guess, Bermuda-based software company that you've not really heard of that operates on an international basis. So we have grown significantly over the last sort of 5 to 7 years, you know, systematically adding lots of different banks and merchants throughout the region on our platform. And we are, you know, really what I like to call this sort of, I guess, the technical plumbing that connects your website to the different banks in Bermuda to allow you to accept credit and branded debit cards online to your website. So the best way to sort of show that is really through this diagram here. And you know, online payments in particular is one of these industries that you don't really realize how complicated it is on the back end until you actually get into it and get under the covers. So if you've created your website, in order to accept those credit card transactions online, you need a payment gateway to be able to connect you basically to the bank where you're holding your e-commerce merchant account. And an e-commerce merchant account is different from a point of sale merchant account. It's different to a personal account. It's different to a corporate account. So when you are looking to start up your online business, when you approach one of the 3 banks here, that being sort of Clarion, Butterfield, and HSBC, you know, you're specifically asking for an e-commerce merchant account, which allows you to settle your online transactions. And in order for that to happen, there is a technical integration that happens between your website and the payment gateway. So here, just represented by First Atlantic here, and what's also known as the bank's processor, which again, as an online merchant, you won't really have a lot of interaction with. Our job is to create that integration with the processor. And the processor has the special certifications and the security requirements to connect into the Visa, MasterCard, American Express networks, and then to the banks that actually issue or provide you with your credit card. So just to talk this through, when you press Pay Now on somebody's website, that is calling a payment gateway like ours, and then we take that credit card data and personal data through a secure channel, and then route that to the bank's processor in the format that they're expecting. And then on the back end of that, they're then sending that data via, let's say it's a Visa card, via the Visa network to the bank that issued you that card to check if you have the available funds on that card. And there's other security checks that happen at that time too. And at that point, if there are available funds, a hold is put on that card, and then that transaction data comes back through that flow, and then we present it ultimately to your website, say yes, go ahead with this transaction, or no, please decline that transaction because there aren't available funds, for example. And there's lots of other reason codes to decline it too. And then ultimately through that credit card network, files are sent to your bank where you have your e-commerce merchant account to say where to credit those funds into which merchant accounts. So all of that happens in milliseconds, providing the internet is playing well that day. But it's something that is a very secure, very fast, very robust, and very complicated network on the back end to ensure that your transactions are done securely and fast, and that your money is actually transacted directly to your bank account itself. So from our perspective, we spend a lot of time maintaining this sort of, I guess, the back end of the website, the back end of the gateway, to make sure that all the connections are up and running, all the security there is in place. And then on the front end of the gateway, we provide basically a much simplified version of an integration to be able to accept those credit card transactions to your website. So you can either do that to us directly through an API integration, or through a hosted payment page, or through plugins that we've had developed for multiple shopping carts, and we'll come on to those as we come in through there. So we try and make it as simple as possible and provide as many options as possible for merchants to be able to choose how they want to accept payments through their websites online. But let's say one of those critical components is the e-commerce merchant account with the bank. So we always advise people is, as they're talking to us about the technical requirements, in parallel, they really should be talking to the bank about applying for that e-commerce merchant account, because there is a process to go through there, and to make sure that the bank it's like applying for a corporate account with a credit facility. So they will ask you, to fill in some documentation. They will ask you for corporate information. They'll ask you for personal information. You'll have to go through the sort of standard KYC and AML process with the bank to make sure that they can vet you as a customer. And that's really because of things called chargebacks. So if you're familiar with that term, it's when a cardholder charges back a transaction that they may have done on your website or in your physical store, because they think they didn't do that transaction, or the product wasn't delivered as advertised. And there's a number of different reason codes for that. But ultimately, because that provides a sort of credit scenario with the bank, they want to make sure that the people that they're supplying the e-commerce merchant accounts to really fit in within the risk profile of the bank, and make sure that everybody is understanding their responsibilities when setting up an online business. So we don't have a huge amount of time here, so I'm just going to show you, just to give you some examples of people that we work with. So FAC has been around for a very long time. We probably process about 80% of the e-commerce transactions within the Caribbean, and our merchant profiles really changed dramatically. So we have people that are selling t-shirts out of their basement, through to large multi-billion-dollar NASDAQ listed companies that use the platform. So it's very scalable in terms of being able to work with different sizes of businesses. So this is just a representation of some of the names that that we work with locally. The majority of our platform is used outside of Bermuda, and that's just purely because Bermuda being a smaller country, there aren't as many e-commerce websites to work for, and when you run an e-commerce gateway platform, you need a lot of transactions to go through the gateway to make the systems work. This is just a representation of the banks we work with. So, obviously we connect to all 3 e-commerce acquiring banks here, and then we work with the large Canadian banks all through the Caribbean, all the big domestic banks in places like Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Cayman, etc. and then with the largest e-commerce acquirer in Central America. So the reason I sort of demonstrate that is just that shows that we can bring a global experience and knowledge base to local processing. So we see everything that happens on a large scale and can apply that to a local market. And then from a transaction perspective, plugins, we talked about those earlier. So this is some of the different plugins that we provide for some of the major shopping carts around the world. So we have partners that create those plugins for us and maintain them, and this is probably the most efficient way to do it from a technology standpoint. So using people that are experts in their space to be able to do that. So if you set up with Shopify or with Wix, for example, the two of the most popular online shopping cart platforms, we have what we call plugins that are pre-integrated to the FAC gateway, which means there's no development work required in terms of software development work required to access FAC's gateway to access our different bank partners on the back end. So you can simply purchase one of those plugins. It's very easy to do, very easy to implement. You don't have to be tech savvy to be able to do that, and it just provides a much easier way to do it. And then that ranges right across from things like Magento. Sabre is one of the largest reservation platforms in the world, used by some major airline companies. Figaro is something that we've been working with a lot over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, which they have a whole website creation product, but what seems to be most popular with them is the payment button option. So whereby if you're a smaller business or a service provider, you can use the payment button function to be able to create an invoice and then basically drop that payment button into a messenger like WhatsApp Messenger, Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, whatever that might be, send in an email, and when the person clicks on that payment button, they can then, they're presented with a payment page that's tied directly to the product or service that you've purchased or want to purchase from that particular merchant. So maybe you don't have a full-blown e-commerce website. Maybe if you're a taxi driver, for example, or just want to bill your clients on a monthly basis. It's a very simple system to be able to send a way to get paid in real time through that payment button, rather than sending what we call sort of dead invoices, right? So, we all get those where you get an invoice that, you then have to go log into your online banking, or God forbid, send a check, or pay somebody in cash. And that is difficult when you're a smaller business, because you have to manage your accounts receivable very closely. And this provides a very simple way to get paid instantaneously, effectively. So within the platform, we have a lot of features and functionalities with regards to online payments itself. We don't have time really to go through all that in huge detail today, but effectively any type of transaction that you want to do online, whether it's a quick sale, whether it's recurring payments, whether you have repeat customers and you want to create that sort of card on file experience, we have all of that in there. We are 3DS 2 supporter, which again is something that's a different topic altogether, but it's basically an online fraud tool. I don't think any of the banks here locally are supporting on the acquiring side right now. They support it on the issuing side, but we have conversations going with them for that. We have anti-fraud platforms in terms of count. So anything that you are looking to do there, the platform is very flexible and able to help you do that. So I think I'm running up on my time here. So I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody. We have a YouTube channel if you are interested in learning more about payments in general. So where we've spent a lot of time with industry experts, interviewing them, getting advice on how to set up your business, how to fund it, where to go for technical expertise. So we have a lot of interviews and information on our YouTube channel if you want to visit there. And our LinkedIn page is very active. From First Line of Commerce, there's a lot of tips and advice, and again, sessions with sort of leading industry e-commerce experts around there. So, please give us a follow on that, and also look at the YouTube channel. It's a huge wealth of information.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate that. I'm just going to ask one question because you did touch on it, and it was a question from the group, is about, with the increase of fraud and theft via credit cards, online credit cards processing, what additional precautions can somebody take and put in place to prevent sort of online fraud or theft within their website?
Yeah, and it's certainly an area of concern, and we see this sort of what we call friendly fraud too, especially when sort of harder times hit, where people actually did the transaction, but they're still trying to charge it back just to save themselves some money. So there are a number of ways you could do that. I mean, outside of Bermuda, we recommend 3D Secure very heavily, and actually all our banks, bar one, mandate 3D Secure on the acquiring side. So it is something that we're talking to very closely with the banks here about supporting. And there's a new version of that the world is moving to in October this year, which we fully support. So we have been sort of lobbying the different banks here to support that so they can protect their customers, because it does give you automatic liability shift on some chargebacks, depending most on the fraud coded chargebacks. And then we have a partnership with a company called Count, which is an anti-fraud platform, so a rules-based decision-making real-time AI platform that allows you to set different parameters within the system to decide whether or not it's a good transaction or bad transaction. So it's more of a proactive approach to weeding out the bad transactions online there too. So we highly recommend people do that, and layering your security. So just as you would do in a physical store, where you lock the doors, have security cameras, have security guards come pick up your cash, etc. You should do the same online too. So you should use multiple methods to protect yourself with transactions online. And if you're delivering, obviously make sure you get proof of delivery, signature on delivery if it's physical goods, and just being really careful around that, because a lot of people still do delivery, but they won't take a signature for it, and fraudsters will realize that quite quickly and be able to win those chargebacks because there's no proof of delivery, nobody actually signing for something, and that's a really simple way to protect yourself as well.
Great, thank you very much, Chris. So before we hop on to the next presenter, I'm gonna put a poll. I hope that I do this right. So BDC, I may need a little bit of help, but I'm gonna put a poll that I'd like everybody to answer, and it's, do you currently have an online presence? And if you could, for accepting payments, and if you could select yes, no, maybe you're in the process of creating it, or working with the banks, etc. And so this is good. This gives us a little bit, our presenters, a little bit of understanding of the audience. So right now we're looking at about 14%, 16% are saying yes. Let's see, it's going up. Okay, so we're 20% are saying yes, 50%, 57. Oh, you guys still okay. Okay, so we're at like the 22% saying yes, 56% saying no, 56% are saying no, and 22% are saying pending. So that's that's good. It's good to see that we're increasing. I can say I've been in this sort of tech area for a while, and the yeses were a lot less 10, 12 years ago. So it's not a significant increase, but it is increasing, so that's great to know. I am going to introduce our next presenter, and sorry. Okay, so I will just I won't bother share my screen, I guess. BDC, you can go to Christopher Dill and Edgar Dill. They will be talking about their company, SpectroPay. And Chris is the president, Edgar is the COO, and SpectroPay provides point of sale and payment solutions for businesses across a range of industries, including retail, restaurant, and healthcare. They began operations in 2015 with the aim of improving the payment options available to small and medium-sized businesses. Their initial target was to provide an affordable mobile payment solution to the taxi industry. In 2017, they expanded to include POS software and desktop card terminals. Now in 2018, they have an e-commerce payment solution to add to their portfolio. So we're really excited to have Chris and Edgar present today.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Coral, for the introduction. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so again, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks also for Coral for the introductions. And a special thanks to Chris, because he's covered some of the material I was going to cover, so he's made my presentation that much shorter. So thank you, Chris. So as Coral had said, SpectroPay, we come at it from a slightly different angle. We started off as a company that focused on mobile payments for smaller merchants, and then branched into other areas like point of sale. And then we also added online payments, because all of it was sort of related together. So we like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop, and our focus has been on cloud-based point of sales and cashless payments. So whether that's a point of sale for retail, hospitality, restaurant, or if you need a credit card solution, and that credit card solution can be integrated with your point of sale, and it can also just be used as a standalone device. And the third thing, which is probably more pertinent for today, is online payments. We provide an online payment gateway. We work with a company called Authorized.net, which some of you may have heard. It's one of the largest gateways for online payments globally. And what that allows us to do is, connect people, to either a POS or to a website. So I was going to go through this diagram, but again, Chris has covered that. But just to emphasize, a couple of things here is that the payment gateway is the key piece, right? That connects you and makes the online payments, work. Of course, you're going to need a merchant account at the bank, but again, it's a payment gateway that is very, very critical to the operation for online payments. Again, for us, and the payment gateway is simply a way of authorizing the transfer of funds between buyers and sellers. Our gateway that we use can allow you to attach to a point of sale or to a website. The gateway can support many different plugins, depending on the type of website you have, or depending on the type of POS that you use. So the other thing I want to mention, just quickly, is that some of the information I was going to present has already been covered. But another way that you can get online, and I just throw this out here because it's becoming more and more popular. There are online marketplaces that are creeping up and becoming more and more popular. One locally, I believe, was Amazula. We have others such as Etsy that are used more globally. And what the online marketplace does is you join a website. That website then gives you access to online payments. It, in most cases, will give you an individual store, right? That has your name, has your branding on it. But it's a very good option for those that are startups. For mature companies, when I say mature, those that have a physical presence, who then want to branch into online payments, they tend to take the option of having their own website. But if you're just a startup and you want to prove a concept or say, look, I want to get started with this, then online marketplace is an option. Also for those who don't have the frequency, I think Chris had mentioned, you need to have a certain volume in order for the online access as a merchant to work for you. If you're going to be doing it on such a part-time basis, or you're going to be doing it like once or twice a week, or only during the summer, then you have to consider the cost of setting up, website and the gateway and all the other pieces that go with it, versus having an online marketplace where a lot of that is taken care of for you. And then if you wanted to, after your business grows and you want to take greater control over your website and your brand, then you can start you have your own website. Okay, but and then you can contact us on email, info@spectropay.bm, or via our website, www.spectropay.bm. Again, very short presentation because, again, some of the material I was going to cover, Chris has already covered, and so not to make the presentation any longer. Okay, but thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Actually, that's really great because we do have a number of questions that I think will be able, if we can fit them in. But we do have a number of questions. You did help to answer one of the questions. There was a question around, do I actually need a website to be able to accept payments? And I think your solution of using a marketplace sort of helps to answer that question for some of the attendees. And I think that's a great option. I'm not sure which screen I am sharing, so there we go. Okay, so the next presenter that we have is George Botelho, sorry. And George is from Advanced Services. George is happily married, Lord-loving husband, father to an amazing son and daughter, and a driven entrepreneur in the field of web and graphic development. He is co-founder of Advanced Services, which started in 2008, providing web development and graphic design. Advanced Services is based on ensuring that clients realize their market and business organizational potential. So I'm going to hand it over to George, and then when George is finished, we do hopefully have a bunch of time where we can answer. There's a lot of questions, and we'll be able to answer a bunch of your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Coral, and thanks everyone for being here. My apologies in advance for any background sound. I'm working from home with a 13 and 6-year-old around, so a little interesting, but I'm very grateful to join again. Advanced Services, as noted, has been around for 14 years or just over. We started out of essentially a need that we saw that wasn't getting met in the realm of web development, particularly professional web development at rates that anyone could afford. We've modeled ourselves on that since. Our company consists of myself, my wife, and 2 professionals that we have that work full-time from India. One is a designer, the other a developer. They've been with us for almost 13 years each. And we have a great track record of delivering over that period of time. Our clients include startups, nonprofits, multiple government departments. Some of the startups that we assist include Saragossa Sea App, Ponto, government departments like the Ministry of Health, Department of Youth, Sport and Recreation, HM Customs, Parliamentary Registry's Office, etc., and others. Yeah, we're primarily a web development entity in that we can build a website from scratch in any manner that's suitable for our clients. So we're very individual around what our clients' needs are and meeting those needs. We can also work with template websites like Shopify, which many people are using now. We primarily just integrate Authorize.net on those. We're not Shopify pros. There are a lot of self-taught individuals that can do that. We are essentially a proper web development company that can do, typically again, websites from scratch. And furthermore, we are an Authorize.net partner. So as was noted earlier, Authorize.net is one of the 4 payment gateway service providers available to us here in Bermuda. We've been integrating them for at least 10 years. We've been an authorized .NET partner for 6 or 7. We can do the work in as little as the same working day, most often, contingent on what's needed. Authorized .NET can integrate with template platforms. It can integrate with proper websites such as WordPress, Joomla, and core PHP. It can be integrated with bookkeeping applications like QuickBooks and Invoice Ninja, booking platforms, point of sale applications or platforms like Vend and Lightspeed, which we're also partners with. So yeah, Authorized.net again is a feature-rich gateway, easy to use, easy to integrate for developers. It costs less than most, if not all, of the other gateway service providers available to us in Bermuda. We can do it very quickly, as I mentioned. We work with all of the banks, or the 2 banks in Global Payments Bermuda, to assist with on the merchant component side. Further, or lastly, just briefly, quickly here, for BEDC members, we offer 25% discount on all our services, as well as currently free payment gateway service integration of any kind, up to 3 hours for free. So if you have a website that you want Authorized.net integrated with, we'll do it for free currently, or within as little as 1 working day. That's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, George. I do have a few questions. I think there's a few questions, George, that maybe you could help to answer around sort of the web development aspect. And a lot of the questions that we've received are around sort of cost or startup cost. And I know it's very hard to provide an accurate cost, right? You have to talk to the client and find out their needs. But could you give maybe sort of, I guess, an estimate or, a range maybe, so that as a small business, if they are building a budget or a business plan, they have to put in there an online presence cost. Could you give them something that they could, estimate in their business plan or budget?
Of course. I would actually suggest, if cost is a major factor for anyone, I would suggest they consider Shopify. It's really quick and easy to get started with. You have very minimal initial upfront fees, and we can integrate Authorized.net again within some hours, any working day. If you would like to have a website designed and developed by a developer such as us, in our case, we don't use templates. So we create the design in question in partnership with our client from scratch, and then we convert it to PHP, which is the programming language, and then integrate the other components like the shopping cart, whatever else is applicable thereafter. So on costing, again, as you mentioned, it differs a great deal considering on what the person wants, but it can be as little as $1,500. We can, for example, currently, if you go to our website promo page, you'll see that we have a website, e-commerce website special for $1,500. That means we will create a website from scratch. We will integrate a shopping cart on it, gateway, and it would include hosting for your domain name. So everything that will be needed initially. For $1,500. That's a lot cheaper than normal, but perhaps that would be helpful.
Awesome. No, that's great. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go back and forth with some questions. We're not really going to share screen. I think I'll put a question out, and in some cases I might pose it to one of you, and in other cases you guys can just jump in. We have a few questions around sort of Stripe and PayPal and what's available in Bermuda, or why they may not be available in Bermuda. So there are a number of questions around Stripe, and if Stripe is available in Bermuda, and I guess maybe Chris Burns might be a good person to speak to that.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so on last view, Stripe was not available in Bermuda, nor PayPal for business users, but it is for individuals. So Stripe and PayPal are what we would call sort of aggregators, or PSPs, for example, which is payment service provider. So what they do that's a bit different is that they actually accept the funds on your behalf. So you set up your merchant account with them, with PayPal, with Stripe, and then they are responsible for distributing the funds back to you as an individual. Not to get overly technical, but with Visa and MasterCard, they set certain rules around what they call cross-border acquiring. So if you are a Bermuda company, you cannot work with a US acquiring bank or Stripe type service unless you have a US entity to contract with Stripe or PayPal with. And that's basically to make sure that, companies that have a bigger market don't steal sort of business from smaller markets, for example. Like the US is very price competitive because it has a very large volume when it comes to online transactions. So Stripe don't have a corporate presence here in Bermuda, nor do PayPal for the requirements to be able to set up as an aggregator or a PSP with local banks. So that's why they're not available here, because they don't have a corporate presence here. They don't have contracts with the local banks here. And the reason they don't have that is it really just is scale, right? So the size of the opportunity within the market. So with, Stripe looks at, the available online business in Bermuda and PayPal doing the same. They basically are saying that Bermuda is a small market. There's X amount of transactions that could come from it, X amount of businesses that are going to go online. So for PayPal or Stripe, for example, Bermuda is not a priority in terms of setting up those systems. So will they come here eventually? I'm not sure. Is my honest answer. Like, even in some of the bigger markets that we operate in, they're still not there, and there doesn't seem to be a desire to be there. We have partnered with PayPal in the past, and they basically say, well, we're one of the payment methods on a website, and we anticipate getting 10 to 15% of the traffic. So you scale that down again to a smaller jurisdiction like Bermuda, and they say, okay, well, what's 10, 15% of all traffic in Bermuda if we got all of it? And then, which you're not going to do because nobody gets 100% of the market. So effectively, it's just not, it doesn't hit their radar because Bermuda's just not a big enough jurisdiction, basically. But I would argue you don't need them here, right? There's, plenty of, like, all us providers here on the call today, there are that can do, equally as a good job as if not better, I would say, from some of the experiences that I've heard of PayPal, for example. Buy local. There's lots of options here.
I would just add to that too, Carl, is that the majority of, even when it comes to payments, point of sale, majority of it does not work here, right? It just doesn't, for the reasons Chris stated. So, we get lots of calls from certain, George and Chris, you get calls as well. And does this work here? Does that work here? And the answer is generally no.
So then can I ask, because I'd like to build upon this a little bit, because I want to say there's a ton of questions about Stripe on our dashboard. When there's a third party application that somebody's trying to use, usually what happens is it lists all of the payment processors that it works with, right? And in some cases it doesn't list, and I've actually experienced this, maybe that's why I'm also asking, is it doesn't list authorized.net. We're an authorized.net dealer as well, or a partner as well. And it lists Stripe, and sometimes they have their own proprietary processor as well. But when it lists Stripe, I think that's why there are some, it has a solution that you need, whether it be a booking engine or whether it be invoicing, but it's specific that you want. So I think that might be also why people are asking for Stripe. Is there a mechanism or maybe a piece of software that, I don't know, George or Chris or whoever might be able to write to sort of connect the you know, a Stripe payment to their website or to the back end? Is that a solution? And I'm going to open it up and you guys can answer that as you see fit.
The answer is, okay, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead. You probably
no, I was just saying, I mean, sorry, I don't want to hog the mic, but so the problem is you're having two gateways connect there, right? So, you know, if you did it through authorized.net or you do it through FAC, you're going gateway to gateway, and that will double up fees. And often somebody like a Stripe, you know, won't entertain that. You know, the way that we have tackled that issue is that, you know, and that's why we have all these different plugins to different providers, is that, you know, we're very open to working with other third parties, if, you know, software wise, if they want to connect to us. And the value that we say we bring to them is generally that, you know, we can open up 20 to 30 countries that you're probably not working in right now from a payments perspective, because, you know, Stripe's not there, or authorized.net's not there, or, you know, PayPal's not there. So we have had success with that. But to the point, I mean, we're always saying, you know, when you're setting up your website, think payments first when you're in Bermuda or the Caribbean, because a lot of these systems that people like, and there's a bunch listed here in the chat here, that you have pre-canned gateway integrations that don't work in Bermuda. So you've got to really when you're setting up your business and looking at choosing your platform, you really got to look and think about the payments piece first, because we've seen it many times where people go, oh, we love this system, and they set everything up, and it's a beautiful website, and then they go to do the payments, and it's Stripe, for example, or, you know, or PayPal only, and then they have to redo everything because they can't get their payments.
Yeah, and the call, I'll just like to reiterate that, because we've encountered it here at SpectroPay. When you're going online, think payments first, and let the rest of it come a distant second. Because a number of people that we work with who have signed up for solutions, only to find out after 3 to 6 months that they can't get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to follow on from that too, right, is that, you know, the company, software company, whether it be, I don't know, you know, whether it's Booking, whatever, that company, software company, has to allow you to integrate. And some of them are just not interested. They say, no, we integrate just with FAC, that's it. You're not interested in anyone else. So that's another roadblock you run into.
Sure, thank you. So I'm getting a few questions around sort of the Wix. And I know that I think both George, I guess you all mentioned like Shopify, and you did have Wix on there as well. Can someone talk a little bit about the Wix websites or the Wix solution, and being able to process online payments for not just online, but they also want it as in person, was part of the question. I'm not sure about the in-person via Wix, but if we could talk to a Wix website and being able to process online payments using Wix. Is there a plugin, you know, for FAC, or we using authorized.net?
Yeah, we have a Wix plugin. So we launched that last year, and so yep, it can. I think we were certainly outside of Bermuda anyway. I'm not sure if authorized.net does support it or not, but we were the first in the Caribbean and Central America to enable a payments plugin for Wix for there. So we worked on it for, I think, a year. Wix is, you know, it's a large company. There's you know, millions of users on it. So we were really excited to get that up and running, because it, you know, it's a great platform. I use it personally for a family business, and it's great that, you know, it is now an option from a payments perspective as well. So yep, we'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about that.
Okay, great.
Authorized.
Okay.
I was just going to say authorized.net, just for your info, and any of the other payment gateway service providers, other than FAC, evidently, do not support Wix template website.
Right. So the next one that, thank you, George, for that. The next one that I'd like to chat about is Can we talk a little bit about like the costs, if you are able to talk about the costs for like transactions, like from the per transaction fee, maybe how that relates to, somebody asked basically, is PayPal cheaper, or are these solutions that we're talking about here cheaper than a PayPal? Because obviously PayPal and Stripe, one of the things that they boast is that they are cheaper. And so can we just talk about comparing maybe a bit of the cost for that? Because that might be a bit of a misconception there. Who'd like to take that?
I mean, I've seen PayPal pricing. So standard I saw for, I think US was 2.95% and 30 cents a transaction. So depending on your average ticket value, that could be cheaper for you or not, right? So if you have a high cost per good sold, like, you know, high price, if you're selling, you know, jewelry or electronic gear, that might work in your favor because you have, that might not work in your favor because you have, you know, high dollar value and low transaction amounts. And if you have low average ticket, you know, so it depends. The average, I mean, the trans fees in Bermuda are definitely lower by 2/3. So it's my understanding. I think we're all pretty much at the same rate, like 10 cents a transaction. But the percentage is controlled by the bank, right? So which is different than it is with PayPal. So that what's called merchant discount rate, that percentage that gets taken off, that's controlled directly by the bank, and that'll be based on volume, like, you know, how much volume you're bringing, how much dollar volume you're bringing, and your risk profile to the bank. So, you know, if they view you as a riskier merchant, there, you know, the price might be a bit higher, you know, on the MDR, but that is always something that you can go back and discuss, especially when you've been a customer for a while and you've shown, like, if you over the 6 months you've shown you have a low chargeback rate, you can certainly, you know, revisit those discussions with the bank. It's my view.
Awesome. Does anybody want to add to it, or you guys okay?
No,
Okay.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. You know, but one thing also to keep in mind, and it's because the question that comes up to us is, you know, people that are transitioning over to online payments from having a point of sale or having a card present system are not aware that online payment fees tend to be higher. All right, the discount rate tends to be higher, at least locally. Banks do that because of the perceived risk of an online transaction versus a in-person transaction. So it's just something to keep a note of, that there is a difference between the two.
Okay, so we are at like 1:26 and we're due to finish at 1:30.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is, there have been some questions of, if I want to, you know, if I look back at our polls, we have 21% that are already online. We have 57% that are no, and 21% that are pending. So that's sort of like 78%. We kind of want to help them get online, right, guys? We know that this is the new way of the world, and let's figure out a way of doing that. And so what I'd like you guys to do as we go around the room for closing remarks is, I'd also like for you to talk about what a client would need to bring or have prepared for you when they want to come meet with you to get set up as an online with an online solution. So how about we start with George?
Sure. I would say that even a call would suffice to get a sense. I suspect, and based on our past experience, that people don't even know what they want initially, often. So a call, a simple call, or in-person meeting even is fine, will be helpful in defining what's applicable. What they might be interested in might be outside their budget. It might not be possible locally. We can shed light on all those types of questions. We've been assisting clients for, again, over 14 years, very diverse clientele. So we've done a lot, and we can speak to, you know, what we've seen in our day-to-day work.
Awesome, thank you. How about Chris Dill, please?
Yeah, so, you know, actually, I had a question. Obviously, it's more rhetorical because we may not actually get the answer, but for those 57% that are not online, like what is the reason? Sometimes the reason is I just don't understand it. Some of it is the cost. Some of it is I just haven't made the time, so it'd be interesting to know, because the answer to that then determines how we approach the customer. But when we
Can I just
take
interrupt then, guys,
Sorry.
while we're finishing up? Why don't our attendees just quickly answer that in the chat for Chris, and I can name a few of them. Sorry,
Okay.
Chris, go ahead.
Right. So, so the main thing that we ask for when we take on a new client is, okay, what is your story? What is your business? And the type of business matters. The volume matters. There's lots of merchants that just want to do stuff during the summer, just want to do stuff part-time. And we have to ask them, is it worth it? If you're just going to be working 3 months and then the rest of the time you're not going to be using the facility, it may not be worth it to you, even though it's a nice to have. So it's just something to have to consider. But knowing how you're going to use it, how often you're going to use it, and that's a key consideration when we take on new clients. Yeah.
Great. Chris Burns.
Yeah, I guess I would say, the biggest thing would be to have a mentality shift around online payments, because there's a lot of people that maybe give up before they start because they think it's too complicated, or they think because we don't have PayPal or Stripe that we can't do this in Bermuda, which is just simply not the case. I mean, you look at all the providers that we have here today, they've been doing this for a long time, and there are hundreds of businesses between us that are successfully doing this in Bermuda. So I would bring a different mindset to it, in terms of this is very possible, very doable in Bermuda. We've got a lot of smart, intelligent people here that can help you get across the line. And as George said, pick up the phone, to any of us. The collective experience on this call is considerable, and any one of us can help you get across the line with it.
Excellent, thank you. So there are some of the comments, just to answer Chris Dill's question, is sort of the slim profit margins, right? One of the folks said that that's what they were concerned about, lack of great design. Some of those, I think there's definitely ways to get around sort of the design aspect, especially with template-driven websites today, right? And I know George can help you with that. And cost is a big factor, is what I'm seeing. One of the aspects that I think small businesses start with is instead of doing online payments real time, people are still doing the bank transfers, right? And that's something I guess we haven't really touched on today. I don't know if somebody wants to quickly answer that or not, but if that's if there's any risk in that on bank transfer, I don't see it as, but I guess somebody else can speak to that.
Yeah, I think we get that question put to us a lot. Is it worth it to go to electronic forms of payment, right? And one thing you have to consider, because we're in a business, I'm certain Chris Burns and George can attest to that as well, is that you sell a service, but you also have to get paid for it. And the more difficult you make it for people to pay you, the bigger your receivables are going to be. And having to chase people to get paid takes up time, and you could be doing other things. So you have to look at the balance of it. And there are times when we have to do chasing, and again, the other guys, it's probably the same. So online bank transfers may be cheaper, but also people may take longer to pay you. And so if they owe you $5,000 and the charges is other than 5%, right? That's better than not having anything at all, waiting for a check in the mail. So you got to consider that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to add to that, you got to remember, you build that cost into your price, right? So, and everybody is on the same playing field here, right? So it's not like everybody has that cost when they're selling online. So it's not, you're not at a disadvantage there. So bring it, do your cost of goods sold analysis well, and make sure you're bringing your payment cost into that end price.
Great. Okay, so just to let everybody know, this seminar will be available. It's being recorded, and it will be available, I believe, on the BEDC website, or they will send it around to you. So I want to say thank you, everybody. I will say that there was a ton of questions that we did not get to, and I'd love to recommend to BEDC to be able to offer just a question and answer segment where we can have the experts around the room here, and they can just fire off questions and answers to get specifics. I mean, we had some stuff around, churches and things like that. We had a lot of people talking around, costs, and there was even a question around, is it possible for us to lobby government, or not government, sorry, to lobby banks around Stripe and maybe bringing costs down, things like that. I will say there was also a question around the cannabis, and if people wanted to, I didn't even want to ask that question because I felt it was a bit too sticky. But I love the question, I have to tell you, but I felt that we could have a whole hour conversation around that. But I would love to be able to do this again and answer more of your questions in depth with the expertise we do have around the table. Does anybody on our panel have last minute want to say something before we end? Or maybe BDC wants to say a few words. Nope. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I hope that we answered a good bit of your questions, and we will hopefully have another one soon.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Bye,
Cole.
guys. Okay.